Why doesn't the Prime Minister just ask Lords Geoffrey Howe and Leon Britton what they agreed with Margaret Thatcher, and whether it had anything to do with the Westland helicopter deal at the time?
So can I ask him, on the process he has set up, whether he will ensure there is full disclosure of all government papers and information from that time, and that there is also, following that, a proper statement in this House where ministers can be questioned about it?
It is very important that we get to the bottom of what happened. I want it to be fast, I wanted to find out the truth, and the findings will be made public.
On his Amritsar inquiry, instead of ordering a civil servant to investigate, why doesn't the Prime Minister just ask Lords Geoffrey Howe and Leon Britton what they agreed with Margaret Thatcher, and whether it had anything to do with the Westland helicopter deal at the time?
I fear the honourable gentleman might have gone a conspiracy theory too far on this one. Look, it is very important. It is very important that we get to the bottom of what happened, and that is why I've asked the Cabinet Secretary to lead this review. He will establish this urgently and establish the facts. The process is underway. I want it to be fast. I wanted to find out the truth, and the findings will be made public. I remember and will never forget my own visit to the Golden Temple in Amritsar. It's one of the most beautiful and serene places anywhere on this planet, and what happened at Amritsar 30 years ago led to a tragic loss of life. It remains a source of deep pain to Sikhs everywhere. Prime Minister Singh, in my view, was absolutely right to apologise for what has happened, and I completely understand the concerns that these papers raise. So let's wait for the outcome of the review by Sir Jeremy Hayward. I don't want to prejudge the outcome, but I would note that so far it has not found any evidence to contradict the insistence by senior Indian Army commanders responsible at the time that the responsibility for this, it was planned and carried out solely by the Indian Army. I think that is important to put that, but we do need an inquiry so we can get to the bottom of this.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister will be aware of the grave concern among British Sikhs about the reports in recent days of UK involvement in Operation Blue Star to storm the Golden Temple. He will also be aware that the broader events of 1984 in India resulted in the death of thousands of innocent Sikhs, and that this has left lasting grief and pain in the Sikh community here in the UK and around the world. This is an open wound which will not heal until the full truth is told. So can I ask him, on the process he has set up, whether he will ensure there is full disclosure of all government papers and information from that time, and that there is also, following that, a proper statement in this House where ministers can be questioned about this?
Minister. Well, I think, first of all, can I agree with him about the deep scars that this event left and the incredibly strong feelings that exist to this day. And as I say, anyone who visits the Golden Temple at Amritsar and sees what an extraordinary place of peace and tranquility and what an important site it is for the Sikh religion knows how powerful this point is. We're going to make sure this inquiry is held properly. Its findings will be made public, which I think is vitally important. As I say, in the end, I don't think anyone should take away the responsibility for these events with the people who are properly responsible for them, and I'm sure the inquiry will find that. In terms of holding a statement and revealing this information and the findings to the House, I'll listen carefully to what he says, but I think a statement might well be the right approach. What happened at Amritsar in 1984 led to a tragic loss of life and must never be forgotten. I know that 30 years on from this dreadful incident, it remains a source of deep pain to Sikhs everywhere. Last year, I went to the Golden Temple and I saw for myself its beauty and its calm and what a special place it holds in the heart of Sikh people around the world. I completely understand the concerns that the documents raise, which is why as soon as I heard about them, I asked the Cabinet Secretary to urgently look into the role played by the UK government and to establish the facts. That process is underway, and I'd like to reassure the public, especially the Sikh community here in Britain and around the world, that the inquiry will be thorough, it will be transparent, and it will get to the truth.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. I'd like to welcome all the Sikh Channel viewers to this very special programme which will be exploring the week's events concerning the UK government's alleged involvement in the 1984 attack on the Golden Temple. Harold Wilson, the former Labour Prime Minister, was famously quoted as saying, "A week in politics is a long time." It's almost a week since details came to light, reporting, amongst others, a large cache of government documents that were released in the 30-year rule, published by Phil Miller on the blog Stop Deportations. And since their publication, we have seen a tidal wave of debate and discussion across the world's media. The two letters referred to, one dated the 6th of February and the other the 23rd of February, seem to link 10 Downing Street, the Foreign Office and the Home Office with details of British support for the planning of an attack on the Golden Temple in Amritsar in 1984 by the Indian Armed Forces. Significantly, this included confirmation of direct British military involvement in the dispatching of at least one SAS officer. The letters also warn of possible repercussions and tension amongst the Sikh community in the UK should the assault take place. In a statement released last Monday, the Sikh Council UK expressed shock of the Sikh community and called for, and I quote, an urgent inquiry into UK government involvement in the events of 1984, including a full disclosure of all documentation. And on Wednesday, during Prime Minister's questions time, a series of questions were raised by various MPs to David Cameron, and David Cameron did confirm that he had ordered an urgent inquiry. So my name is Gurnam Singh, and I'd like to welcome you to this special debate on the events of the past week and the possible repercussions. And I'm delighted that we have parliamentarians with us here at the Sikh Channel International Broadcasting Centre. So just before we begin the programme, I'd just like to welcome our guests. On my far right, we have Pat McFadden, Labour MP for Wolverhampton South East, and we have Tom Watson, Labour MP for West Bromwich. We have Paul Uppal on my immediate right, who is a Conservative MP for Wolverhampton South West. Next to Paul is Arun Singh Photay, who's Conservative councillor in Wolverhampton. And on my left, we have Gurpal Singh, who is a political researcher and community activist from Wolverhampton. Next to him is Jagdeesh Singh from the 1984 Genocide Coalition. Next to Jagdeesh is Gurinder Singh Josan, who's the head of political engagement at the Sikh Council UK. And finally, we have Jagtar Singh Gill, who's the national executive member of the Sikh Council and also director of the Midlands region. But we also have somebody called Phil Miller, who is a journalist and runs the Stop Deportations blog, who was the first person to actually break this story. So I'd like to welcome all the guests here, and I'd like to begin with Phil Miller. So Phil, welcome to the show.
Hi, Gurnam. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, thanks very much, Phil. As I say, I wanted you to just give us some background information and the work that you've been doing. Just to begin with, there's been some speculation about the authenticity of the documents. And as the first person to draw attention to these, can you provide us with a brief summary as to how you came across the material?
Yeah, so I was at the National Archives in London, which is the British government's official depository for all its documents. And I was actually looking for evidence of SAS advisors in Sri Lanka. And in that process, what I found was this information. And there was no sign that the documents had been tampered with. As far as I could tell, they're totally legitimate. And since then, I understand that other people have seen the files, and there's no longer any dispute about their authenticity.
Phil, do you think that, you said that it hadn't been tampered with. Do you think that the British government was caught on the hop? But it's pretty incendiary material, wasn't it?
Yeah, it is very incendiary. At the time, I didn't really appreciate the reaction that it would cause. It was only really with talking to Jagdeesh Singh from the 1984 Genocide Coalition the day after I found the files that I began to realise the nature of this material, and it was all credit to his organisation really for bringing it to the attention of parliamentarians.
So what was the file, Phil, that was, because you weren't looking specifically for 1984 June Amritsar, it was a different file, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the Prime Minister's office file on India.
Right.
So I thought there might be some correspondence in there from Sri Lanka.
Okay.
That had sort of been put in
So
there.
just the last point, because you have published some more material subsequently, and I know that there was an article in The Guardian yesterday suggesting that there's, quite a lot of involvement in the Sri Lankan situation. Can you just kind of bring us up to speed with what's the latest information that we have?
So it's always been alleged that former SAS officers were training the Sri Lankan commando units during the start of the very brutal conflict there. And what we've now found is that this had the authorisation from Downing Street, that they made no objection to these companies doing that. And I'd also like to draw attention, there's an article in the Hindustan Times where they're claiming that the officer who advised on Amritsar also advised the Indian peacekeeping force in Sri Lanka in 1988, which is an extraordinary claim because, of course, the Indian peacekeeping force were responsible for killing thousands of Tamil civilians during their time in Sri Lanka. So either this advisor gave bad advice on 2 occasions, or his advice was ignored on 2 occasions. In either case, that's not a particularly good advisor.
Okay, Phil, so thanks very much, and I'm sure that there will be more coming from your blog, and so thanks very much for all the hard work and in uncovering this material, and we will be working with you and bringing you on Sikh Channel again. Thanks very much, Phil.
Okay, thanks, Gurnam.
Okay, I'm going to now turn to Pat, if I can. Pat McFadden, MP for Wolverhampton South East. Pat, I know that you've actually called for full disclosure, as the Sikh Council UK requested, of other letters should be released, and that you, in fact, I'm going to quote you, you said, "I think British Sikhs and all people concerned about human rights will want to know exactly the extent of British collusion with this period and this episode, and we'll expect some answers." But I'll put the question to you, what is the point of opening up old wounds from 30 years ago? Surely we've got kind of harmony in Punjab, we've got relative harmony in this country, and isn't this a dangerous move?
Well, my experience as an MP representing thousands of Sikh constituents in Wolverhampton is that it's not that the wound is being reopened, but that it's never healed. And I think it's never healed for 2 main reasons. One is, of course, the enormous loss of life, not just in the storming of the Golden Temple in Operation Blue Star, but the whole series of events in 1984 in India, particularly the riots and the anti-Sikh riots that happened following the assassination later that year of Indira Gandhi. And thousands of people lost their lives, and I think that has had a lasting impact on the Sikh community around the world, including here in the UK. But there's a second reason why the wound hasn't healed, and it isn't just about the enormous loss of life, painful as that is for the community, many of whom lost close relatives. It's also the lingering sense that the full truth has never been told, and the sense of cover-up and the sense of injustice, and that has added to the pain of this. And the thing about these documents, which I think has caused such a reaction, is that here is something that's released under the 30-year rule. These are documents that have not been made public during that period. And for a community that feels the full truth about these events have never been told, this simply adds to a series of questions. And that's why I've asked for 2 key things. One is full disclosure of what happened. What more is there? What was the request? What was the response from the UK government? At what level was that response decided? Who knew about it? Prime Minister, Foreign Secretary, Cabinet, and so on. But secondly, a chance for, once we know the full truth, if we find the full truth, a chance for MPs to properly cross-examine a minister so that we can ask questions on behalf of the constituents we represent about it. Those are the 2 key things I've asked for.
Just one other point. This was 30 years ago. It was a different parliament. It was a different government. And would you not agree that Prime Minister Cameron actually has behaved impeccably? I mean, he's responded very positively. He responded urgently. And in the House, he was very forthright. And, he confirmed that he would establish a cabinet, his secretary would be instructed to look at the case urgently and establish the facts. And Andrew Lawnsley as well, who was the leader of the House, has been on record and saying that the truth needs to be established. So would you not agree that the British government has behaved impeccably, really?
I think we need to. I don't think we can make that judgment until we see the results of what the Cabinet Secretary has been asked to do. It's one thing to be asked to look into it. What I want to see is full disclosure. So I'm afraid I can't pass a verdict on the actions of the government today until we know the result.
Well, how many out of 10 would you give Cameron?
Well, I think I'll wait and see what the result of what he and the Cabinet Secretary have done. So, and when I speak to my constituents, I had a meeting with a group of Sikh community leaders yesterday in Wolverhampton. Yeah. They are very, very keen to know the full truth. And one other point I'd make about the Sikh community itself, this has come out under the 30-year rule. This is a year of anniversaries, obviously 30 years since the events of 1984, but also here in the UK, it's the 100th anniversary of the First World War. And what a lot of people have pointed out to me in recent days is that the Sikh record of service in the UK military in both World Wars is the most tangible evidence, as if it were needed, of the loyalty and commitment of the Sikh community to the UK. Okay. So that, I think that adds to the sense of bewilderment, at least, and more than that, about these documents.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to turn to Tom Watson now, Labour MP for West Bromwich. Tom, you've expressed massive solidarity with your Sikh constituents, and on the BBC Asian network, you said that huge questions about the role of the British government at the time have been raised. And can you let the viewers know what kinds of questions you're referring to? What are these huge questions?
Yeah, well, firstly, I think it's the question of on whose authority was this decision taken. Because on what we've seen from these files, and we've not seen all of them yet, it seems that the decision was taken by 2 or 3 ministers. It didn't go to a cabinet subcommittee, or that's the impression we get now. We might be proven wrong on that, but it certainly didn't go to Parliament.
But isn't there ministerial prerogative on these kinds of high-level, intelligence-related kind of...
I would imagine that on an issue that has such huge foreign policy implications, that matters to so many British Sikhs, even in 1984, for there not to be some scrutiny of the executive on a decision of that magnitude strikes me as being unusual. And when we understand this situation more, I think there may be lessons for Parliament in a wider context.
Okay. I know that in Prime Minister's Questions Time on Wednesday, you made reference to the Westlands helicopter deal and a possible connection with that affair and the then Tory government's, and I'm sure that you have revealed further letters. I'm aware that you have on your website related to this affair. Well, do you think that David Cameron, when he said that it was a conspiracy too far, that he was actually right there?
Well, the Prime Minister has tried to dismiss legitimate questions I've asked him in the past, and that led to the Leveson inquiry on phone hacking. So I think he was unwise to say that. But I don't think these documents are going to show a direct link between sales of military equipment and the decision to send in an SAS officer, if that's what we did. But what I was trying to explain was the context of the consideration at the highest level of the government at the time. It was only about selling military equipment to India. There was a whole series of documents between November 1983 and February 1984, when the documents were published, that shows the almost obsession with ministers about manipulating the aid budget in order to give 27 Westland W-30 helicopters to India, 6 of which were for the Indian military. And there was actually a discussion about persuading India to claim that it wasn't for the military, not to put any livery on it, because that could cause difficulties. So,
but if it was payback time for the British government, because that's the implication for supporting the 1980... I mean, the British government actually lost £500 million. In today's money, that would be probably about £3 billion. So, in a sense, it wasn't payback at all, was it?
Well, it was a terrible deal. I mean, in the end, we had to buy these helicopters back for scrap because they didn't work. And then 2 years later, actually, history shows that it cost 2 cabinet ministers their jobs, including one Leon Britton, who we know that on February the 23rd, 1984, was sent a document saying if Mrs. Gandhi carries out her plan, then there could be unrest in the UK and you need to prepare for it.
Yeah. I mean, the other suggestion is that maybe the Labour Party is playing politics here, and with Sikh sentiments, and that your motive is the election in a year's time, and that I mean, if you look at some of your record in terms of the struggles of the Sikhs in the past few years, I mean, the Cllr issue, the Rajwana issue, the Buller issue, I mean, why is this issue, so important when the other issues seem to be less important for the Labour Party?
I'm afraid, Dr. Singh, I'm a backbench Labour MP now, so I can't speak for the party.
Yeah.
But what I can tell you on this is, the reason I spoke out so quickly when the document was emailed to me in the early hours of Monday morning was I understood straight away the significance of this to a very large number of people for whom it is my duty to represent. And, you know, people will make those allegations about both parties, but for me the important thing is, how do we deal with this information now that the cat is out of the bag?
Yeah.
And full disclosure is the only way, I think, that people can form their own view of what policymakers were thinking at the time. And, you know, David Cameron has an opportunity to do some good here. He was a teenager like I was in 1984. He was nowhere near this decision. And should he choose to, then he could actually say that, and he could ask the people who made the decision at the time. 2 of them are in the House of the Lords. One of them he made a trade advisor last year. They could tell us why they made those decisions. And it's a surprise to me that, given the significance of this issue, that's not already happened. And so I disagree slightly with Pat here. Pat has been more kind to the government than I think they deserve, because I thought the announcement was inadequate. I thought giving a civil servant the right to sort of review these documents is a de minimis position. It's what you do when you want to kick an issue into the long grass.
Okay, I'm just going to come back to Pat, because I know, I mean, you guys are spring chickens in terms of Parliament, but Pat's been around for a few years, and in fact, you've even...
Tom was elected before me.
Was he? Oh, well, I know that you've held ministerial portfolios as well. Pat, one of the issues that the Sikh community is over and over saying is, whenever we went to the British government over the past 30 years to say, please support us, please, there's genocide taking place, we were told over and over again that you know, the British government cannot interfere in the internal affairs of a sovereign other government. I mean, hasn't this defence been blown out of the water now, given what we've heard now?
Well, I think that's an important point, because, and this is what my constituents were saying to me in the meeting yesterday, if such a request was made and acceded to, then that was becoming involved with the affairs of another country, and in the most incendiary way, because, as I say, the result of these events was thousands of people losing their lives, and a lasting sense of pain, of grief, of disaffection, of mistrust, and all the other things that have arisen from this. And that's why I raised, you know, when we were talking a few minutes ago, the point about sort of Sikh contribution to the UK, because what these documents are doing is not just raising questions about India, but raising, you know, people feel that their trust, their loyalty to the UK, which has been shown over many decades, has itself, you know, some people have used the word betrayal to me, and I think that's what is contributing to the sense of hurt over this.
Okay. Thanks very much, Pat, and thanks very much for the kind of forthright views. Paul, I'm going to come over to you now, because, I mean, first of all, I just want to begin by, on the behalf of the Sikh Channel viewers and hopefully the Sikh community, thank you for the work that you've done over the last few weeks, particularly, both as a parliamentarian but as a member of the Sikh community. I know that you've been working day and night to try and offer solidarity, really, with the victims of 84 in relation to this issue. And indeed, in the House this week, you said that you have shown great solidarity with Sikh sentiment, that you want to end rumour, suspicion and speculation for the truth to come out. And so that's very, you know, noble. That we should avoid politicising the issue as well. But isn't the truth out? And it's a political truth, that whatever else we can say, it's the case that Margaret Thatcher has got the blood of thousands of Sikhs on her hand. Isn't that the truth?
I think, obviously, look, this is a very sensitive issue. On Monday, when this news broke, I think I was the first Member of Parliament who actually asked for first full disclosure of all the documents involved. I did that on lunchtime on Monday. I then, in the evening, actually went to go and see Number 10, specifically about this issue. And I could see, personally, when I had a chance to sort of speak to the Prime Minister, how upset he personally was about this as well. And I think what we've seen in the statement that came, and also the video messages in terms of that was released, I think, on Wednesday evening, the Prime Minister's basic words were that this inquiry will be thorough, it'll get to the truth, And I think it will be fairly quick as well. And it will be robust. Those were the important sentiments that I think he expressed. On Monday night, I'm actually going to go and see Sir Jeremy Hayward with some other Sikhs as well, just to impress upon him just the level of sentiment and how sensitive this is. Because I think the important thing is, and forgive me, I think it is important we take the politics out of this. A lot of people will write letters and do all this sort of stuff, but I have actually wanted to go and see the people who are going to be right at the centre of this, to impress upon them how important it is that we move urgently and we get to the truth about this.
But if I can just explain, I mean, in a sense, we have to ask you the questions because you're part of the sitting Conservative
and also a Sikh as well.
Yeah. But David Cameron in the House on Wednesday said that he did not want to prejudice the outcome of whatever inquiry will take place. But in the same breath, he quoted General Brown's comments of no knowledge of UK involvement, and so didn't he prejudge the findings by saying that?
I think what he was trying to do, which I think is the important thing, and almost everybody would agree about this, the problem is, and it goes back to the initial point, you mentioned Andrew Lansley, I think, at the beginning. He was responding to a question I asked on Thursday about this. We as Sikhs in a community, if we're really honest about this, from partition onwards, have always been a political football for vested interests, whatever their agenda is, be it Pakistan and India, in the middle when you look at partition of Punjab and what happened there, even with Imperial Brits as well. When you look at the Anglo-Sikhs War and things have happened there. For the last 30 years, I felt there's been all sorts of agendas. Now, there was an interesting article last night, which I think maybe some of the other sort of people who are going to speak later on may sort of highlight as well, which I think is now actually on the Telegraph and may actually get onto some of the other broad sort of sheet press as well, that actually none of this is actually that new. There was, I think it was Raman, who was the head of the Indian Secret Services, did in his biography as well a statement specifically about these SAS officers. When they came out, they signed in to Dabar Sahib. Their signatures were witnessed. Their advice was, do not go in. If you go in, you use the police or go for a political settlement, because you will actually incur civilian casualties if you go in. Because the problem we have is there's a big gap from February to June. And I think that's the problem we have with all this.
That's a really important... Tom, I'm going to come back to you on this one. Because
it's actually running in the Broad Street at the moment.
I'm going to come back to you on this because, the Labour Party is trying to paint a very negative picture here. And, here's Paul saying that actually, if the British government were involved, they might have actually given advice that the Indian government didn't take.
Yeah, well, I've said that. I mean, it's almost impossible to think that the SAS would have advised to do it.
Which is what Matt Tully said.
But the point, but I think the point that Pat makes,
be an SAS operation.
I think the point that Pat makes was the significance is this is Britain taking a decision to play an interventionist role, and I'm sure Jagdeesh will have views on this. That means that you can legitimately ask the question: why didn't they take an interventionist role at any other point in history, or why didn't the Thatcher administration do that? Why was it on this one issue? And the only way I think people can form their own view is by this full disclosure. That's why I think it's so important. And Paul's going in to see this civil servant on Monday. No other MP has been given that right.
So why don't you have an all-party approach on this then, Paul?
I am also going to ask leaders within the Sikh community to go and see Sir Jeremy Hayward as well, because I think it's important. Because primarily, I'm coming at this not from a political point. I'm coming from that. I'm a Sikh.
Would you let me go with you as well, Paul? I think that's appropriate. I'm an elected member of Parliament. I think we should both go.
Well, let me... I'd requested this some days ago. Okay, someday, and I think he has an opportunity.
This is going to be a balanced inquiry.
Well,
it should at least be part. It should have a balance of politics.
Because the problem is it'll.
Okay.
And I come back to that point. I'm not interested really, genuinely, because I was in the Golden Temple a couple of years before it was stormed in Blue Star. I was there with my father and my grandfather. It has for every Sikh, it has a particular significant emotional attachment. Okay. What I've said on the question on Thursday, and I'm still going to maintain, I want to take the politics out of this. I'm happy to. I want to go and see Sir Jeremy Hayward. He's going to have some other representatives of the Sikh community there. If he wants to have a meeting with Tom Watson, I'm sure he'd be more than happy to do that.
Jagdeesh, I'm just going to bring you in here. Jagdeesh from the 1984 Alliance. why are we taking such a negative view about this? I mean, surely, Britain is a very responsible country, and that they wouldn't have given advice that would have led to the destruction. In fact, that seemed like a botched operation that's not connected to the SAS. So are the Sikhs not just taking a totally negative view about this, and that the British are actually, loyal? I mean, we have massive, kind of historical associations with the British.
Well, for all the reasons that Pat, Tom, and indeed Paul has said, this is a colossal subject. There's genocide involved here. It's not just the bricks and mortar of the Golden Temple that is important to us. It's the lives of the little children, the men, women, and their children. 8,000 civilians killed in the space of 4 to 5 days with military bombardment.
But we know that, Jagdeesh.
We know
that was the Indian army that did that.
We know that.
But why are we trying to suggest somehow that the British government
The British government, for the last
in
30 years, has maintained a conspiracy of silence on that issue. Now, with these explosive documents of a nuclear nature, which have come forth, that's broken that silence. It's destroyed that silence. The ghost of '84 has come back to haunt the government.
Pat, I know you have to go now, but I mean, we wanted the rumour mill to stop. We wanted innuendo to stop.
Absolutely.
But the kind of language that we've got from here, the kind of ghost of '84 and all that kind of, isn't the opposite going to happen? And we found with the Bloody Sunday inquiry, etc. Isn't, unless we kind of nip it.
Can I just say one point?
I just want Pat to respond.
Just one point. Pat, I would like to say positively to Pat, to Tom and Paul, the Sikh community commends you. You're taking a very heroic stand. And you have nothing to fear or be criticised about. Go forth and be strong in what you say. It's the governments, both Labour and Tory, that have miserably and disgracefully let us down.
But just because Pat talked about the rumour, we wanted to stop the rumour mill, but aren't we seeing actually the opposite happening? And in India now, there's all kinds of wild stories taking place and people using...
And as I said, when we began the discussion, one of the reasons there is such a sense of pain and injustice over this is because people feel the full truth hasn't been told. So I come back again and again to full disclosure. The way to stop rumours, the way to stop things being said that may be true, maybe not true, is to know all the facts. It's very, very simple. And sometimes the facts will be uncomfortable. They might make very uncomfortable reading. But I believe that the way to stop the rumour mill is to tell the full truth. And the one final thing I'd say is that I think the worst outcome from the process that's been set in train is some partial disclosure which simply begs more questions. Because I think people will then feel even more aggrieved if they think, well, there's something going on here and we haven't really been told about it. So I think even if the truth is a difficult one, the best way to stop the rumour mill is to tell it.
Thanks very much. Tom, one of the allegations made, and I just put the point to Paul, was that the Prime Minister himself was prejudging or preempting the very inquiry that he's set up by, referring to the General Case Bar's recent comment. But surely you're doing the same, aren't you, by putting all these documents on your website, bringing in, quite disparate kind of issues, and it's not muddying the water.
There's no muddy in the water about the documents I'm putting on my website. These are facts. These are government documents that I believe deserve a wider audience. And actually, there are a whole load of documents that deserve a wider audience. This could be over this weekend. The Prime Minister could have published all these documents and just be done with it. We don't need Jeremy Hayward and a hand-picked delegation by a Conservative MP to deal with this. What we need is this information out there so people can form their own view. And there are files missing. My researcher has discovered a Home Office file, HO532. The entire contents are missing and should be in there under the 30-year rule.
So are these the seeds for a whitewash then in the inquiry? Is that what you said?
Well, as a former Defence Minister and a Cabinet Office Minister, I have got an inkling about how these inquiries can go. And if you want to knock something into the long grass, or you're slightly worried about what the outcome might be, you generally get a civil servant to do it.
I mean, Paul, the level of trust in David Cameron may be high, but it's kind of not going to be high. It's going to start to crumble. And, there are various kind of, not just rumours, but people are digging up other material. So how can you kind of, as it were, convince the Sikh community who is concerned in our views that no, there's integrity, David Cameron will, and I know you said that you're going to have a meeting with him, but will you make him aware that, we need to act faster, we need to avoid any kind of whitewash?
Absolutely. absolutely from the core of my soul. That's what I'm going to do. Every sinew of my being will do that. The one word the Prime Minister used on the Wednesday night video message was transparency.
Yeah.
In a statement earlier that day, I think Ed Miliband had said what Sikhs want is transparency. So this is very simple. I think this will be, I trust and I hope this will be very speedy, it will be very transparent, it will be very thorough, and it will get to the truth.
Yeah.
And that is, it's very simple, there's no rocket science about this.
And will you go on record, because, you know, if the truth comes out and the truth is revealed that there was possibly illegal activity, you know, it was illegal under UN conventions that doesn't allow a country to attack the religious institutions. I think it's 50. Jagdeesh will know about that. There are actually. Would you then, if there was any illegal activity, would you then order the British government? Well, you can't order them, but would you?
The British
But
government,
would you then want then to some kind of prosecutions to emerge out of that?
Let's, I have to say, Uncle, because again, I refer back to the initial response I've given. Not just me, but all my family are tired of we want to get to the truth.
Yeah.
Shall we let the truth come out? It should come out fairly soon, which from, sort of my vibe on this, it's going to come out fairly quickly. And the truth will come out fairly transparently, very thoroughly, very quickly. And then we can certainly cross that bridge to when we get to that point. And at that point, I will say now, I'm more than happy to come into any studio, any radio station and debate it.
So are you saying that your loyalty to your party is secondary to your loyalty to the truth and to the commitment for justice to actually come forward?
Well, I am a Sikh, absolutely. My loyalty first and foremost is to my country. I'm a British Sikh. Okay? It's country, constituency, party. That's not my words, those are Churchill's words. I think if you stick to that, you won't go far wrong in life.
Okay, let's just quickly go on to Arun, who's been listening quietly. Arun, I mean, you're involved in the Conservative Party, and Conservative Party have done really hard work over the last few years to try and persuade the Sikhs that is a natural party for the Sikhs, and because we know historically they used to support Labour, but haven't they shot themselves in the foot? I mean, why should Sikhs support the Conservatives when it's revealed that they were actually conspiring to attack the Golden Temple, allegedly?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'd like to start off as a relatively, and I use the word relatively, young Sikh. I was one when Shri Amritsar was actually stormed, and I think we all agree that for Sikhs, for me in particular, it was a very, very dark day. Our holiest shrine was stormed, and then subsequently it's a human rights violations after. My family, Amritari, lived in Delhi, and they told me stories about how the sons would take shifts to stay awake to make sure that the family houses and the neighbours were protected. So I am actually glad that there is an inquiry going into this, and the truth will come out. And I would like to say that please keep politics out of it. This is hopefully the information that comes out will be for the better of the Sikh community and not a political point scoring system for anybody. Going back to the question that you asked, I would say that if it is proven that there was involvement, then I would say maybe if there were more Sikhs in the Conservative Party at that time, then that decision wouldn't have been taken. And I have always maintained that we do not belong to one party, and that we should be members of all parties. Sikhs should have equal representation across the board. Now, about shooting yourself in the foot, I don't think any of the Conservative members, I guess from my generation, had any input at that time. And we was I believe, a new formed Conservative Party, which I still think will still have faith in.
Okay, let's go to our Sikh Council UK representatives who have been really leading the charge on this and doing some amazing work, putting out the press releases and keeping everybody informed. And I just want to congratulate Sikh Council for that. We've got Jagtar, Singh and Gurinder. Gurinder, there's an appeal to keep this apolitical. This is a human rights issue. Even if the Conservatives were in power at the time, today's Conservative Party is a new party, it's a new leader, and that we should take the politics out of it.
Okay, before I come on to that, can I just put on record the Sikh Council and my personal gratitude to Phil Miller, to Jagdeesh Singh, 1984 Coalition, etc. For the work they've done in bringing this out, and the work they have done has really, the reaction to it demonstrate the importance of it to the Sikh community in this country. In terms of the politicisation, I think you're absolutely right. You know, I'm on record. I've said this previously as well. David Cameron and the current Conservative government, you know, it may have been the same party in 1984, but the current David Cameron League government and his colleagues in the government now were not around at that time. They are not responsible for what happened in 1984. But David Cameron is responsible for what happened now. And the responsibility David Cameron has, nobody else has. You know? And when we talk about politicisation, you know, one thing people need to understand, politicians of all parties, the Sikh community is politically very intelligent. You know? And we are watching, you know, we are watching to see what's happening. You know? And we will make our political judgment in terms of our experience of what happened, what people say, what they do, and the actions that happen. So when questions are asked in Parliament, when statements are put out, when letters are written, etc., we are keeping an eye on that. You know, this is an issue which is of massive importance to the Sikh community, but we also understand that, you know, Ed Miliband, as leader of the Labour Party, can't give full disclosure today. Yeah. The only person who can give that is David Cameron. So the responsibility today is that of David Cameron. You know? We also understand, you know, we understand the processes in terms of inquiries and stuff like that. And my own view is that the inquiry by the Cabinet Secretary is probably the bare minimum the Prime Minister could have announced at the time. Now, we're grateful that the Prime Minister acted very quickly to do something. And I'm also of the view that, you know, having the Cabinet Secretary look into it also gives some political control to the Prime Minister and the politicians in terms of the outcome of that, in terms of the timing, in terms of the whether it's full disclosure or not. And in terms of full disclosure, it's probably also worth putting on record what Sikh Council understand by full disclosure. So just that there's no ambiguity about this. You know, these letters are dated February 1984. The attack on Lee Harmandir Sahib took place in June 1984. We had and that led on to the security situation. It led on to Delhi, the genocide, and years after that, you know, a lot of activity continued in Punjab. For us, full disclosure now means disclosure of every document and every fact in relation to the British government involvement in Indian affairs at that time, in relation to those. Can I just add one other thing as well? Is for us, you know, as I said, the Sikh community is a very politically intelligent community. So we want an outcome. Yeah, we want all our politicians to be involved in delivering that outcome. We think they all have a role. Yeah. And you know, disclosure. We may get a set of documents in front of us, and we may understand at the end of this that there were these decisions were taken at the time. Okay. That's fine, but we also need to understand why those decisions were taken. And in that context, if Tom's done some work in terms of the wider context of the discussion going on, I think that will have some bearing as well. You know?
Okay, Tom, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, look, I mean, I honestly think that people will form their own view if they see the documents, and they'll do it in quiet reflection, and we will be. So
we need some kind of judicial oversight then.
Well, I think the documents need to be surfaced before we can then decide where to go, and that's why this point is so key. And Paul, you know, you've got access to the Prime Minister and this Cabinet Secretary that no other politician has, apparently. You know, you're not going to take me, but why don't you take Gurinder and Jagdeesh with you to make sure that they can put the questions on behalf of their organisations and find out whether they're going to get the answers
Paul,
they want.
You said you're going to take Sikh leaders. Who are these Sikh leaders that you're going to be taking?
Well, I think I've sort of Sir Jeremy Hayward has spoken to me about, and I've said, look, it's ultimately up to him who he's going to sort of speak to. I would certainly welcome representatives from Sikh Council because of the work they've done on this.
Well, what about Jagdeesh? Should we take him?
Well, I'm not. That's above my pay grade.
Would you like to go and have tea with the Prime Minister?
Well, it's not the Prime Minister; it's a Cabinet Secretary.
Okay, Cabinet Secretary.
Look, it's his judgment call at the end of the day. Okay,
No, would you ask him to take him? I think this guy knows what he's talking about. So why don't you take him, and he can look him in the eye and see whether he's telling the truth.
Well, look, Tom,
you're not going to take me as a fellow politician.
Tom, I'm saying
okay, yeah. Well, let Paul just respond to this, and then we'll.
Look, I think it's perfectly sensible for a representative of Sikh Council to speak with the Cabinet. I don't have any issue with that. Who that is and how is above my.
Just the Sikh Council. What about other Sikh organisations or other human rights groups?
Jagdeesh, it's not in my remit. Okay, I've got my recommendation was I think you should meet with representatives from Sikh groups. My recommendation is, ultimately, it's his judgment call.
I think possibly...
I think perhaps you're conflating the
What we're
point.
seeing here is a control of the process.
Well, let me just come back
and
to
people are
Jagtar
going to
Singh.
form their own views about Paul's answer there.
Can I just come back on that? Because this is important, because it's a shame it always goes. It had to go, I guess, in essence, the nature of the beast is that way. You're right, I agree with you, Paji. You know, politicians, and I've seen this in my 3.5 years, and I'm just, you know, this was what my grandfather said when I was actually in Harminder Sahib. He said, look, you know, just because you're very, very smart, and politicians always think they're very, very smart, don't assume everybody else is stupid. People can meet us, they will see us on this TV, they will see us and what we're about. There's no issue about, I'm very, very comfortable about that. My recommendation is, to the Cabinet Secretary, he should also meet representatives of the Sikh community. Okay. That is all I can do. Well, if that is perceived for somebody to take that and say, oh, we see this as political control, that is then going back to that whole process again.
Just ask this question.
Okay, just last one, and then I'm going to...
Are you deciding who you're taking with you on Monday night?
No.
So what delegation? Jeremy Hayward's deciding who sees him and who doesn't.
I think he's going.
What are the names of these individuals?
I don't know. I mean, I just recommended. I thought it would be wise and sensible to speak to representatives.
Okay, I think I thought
that would be fair.
We've probably dealt with that.
And that is
it's putting on record. The Sikh Council is not aware.
Let me come to Jagtar Singh
at the moment. But
are you pleased? I mean, are you pleased with David Cameron's performance? With Paul's role, because, you know, he's from the Conservative Party. Are you happy at the moment in the way in which this thing is going?
Well, when the news broke on Monday morning, we immediately sent out a press release. And there was a response from the Prime Minister on Monday. There was a response from the Prime Minister at question time, and also a video message that he sent out on Thursday. And
Wednesday.
Wednesday evening.
So he's playing a blinder then?
Well, you know, he's doing what we would expect the Prime Minister to do, which is on an urgent matter, he's responding quickly. But what I do want to say, and I get back to the issue which was played out a few minutes ago, was that this mustn't no way take form of party politics. I know it's very easily done, easily played out, but we from the Sikh Council work with both Labour, the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives, and it's important that we all work together to make sure that we get full disclosure. Now, if Paul is saying here today that the government's committed to full disclosure, we welcome that. If the Prime Minister is saying it, we welcome that. So we need to allow them some time, not too much time, to come out with this disclosure. It's important that we allow them space to do that, but the community can't wait forever for that to happen. And one thing I do want to add, that it's you know, for us Sikhs, this news was heartbreaking to hear that the government was involved, especially when you know, for all these years when we've been knocking on the door of government and saying, look, there have been atrocities in Punjab, and the government's always said, well, we don't interfere in other states' affairs. And now we hear that there might have been some sort of collusion. So it's really, really important, especially 30 years is coming very soon, the anniversary of Blue Star Operation, that we get to the bottom of this. And now Paul has committed to that, and the Cabinet Secretary will disclose the documents. We welcome that Sikh Council, but it has to be the Sikh community, and then the politicians are given time to respond and ask the Minister questions as well, which was asked. That's important as well.
I just want to come to Jagdeesh now. I want to broaden the discussion, because we know that in India these revelations and the coverage has taken particular... I mean, there's lots of party politics going on there, and words like betrayal are coming forward. There was a demonstration in Delhi yesterday, I think, where they were demanding that in the British Parliament an apology to the Sikhs should be made. I mean, are all these allegations and charges about the behaviour of the British, historically even, another betrayal, are they justified, or again, are we just being drawn into the kind of dirty politics of Indian
Not at all.
parties?
If you look at the history, and we haven't got time to go into the detail of the history, if you look at the history of Britain and the Sikhs, and I emphasise it's the British government, the British state, not good people like Tom Watson and Paul Uppal, the backbenchers, the ordinary good British people. We have no conflict with them. Let me make that very clear. And our loyalty to Britain has been constantly proven. But the British state, the British government, has been constantly at war with the Sikhs, betraying the Sikhs, dividing their homeland. And since 1984 onwards...
But is that kind of language helpful? At war? It's a very kind of...
Okay, take it as you wish. Take it as you wish.
Language,
but let me turn to certain factual points.
You know, giving advice to some military people and at war are two different things.
Well, hold on. I've given my opinion. When you look at the facts on the ground, you can decide for yourself whether it's going to war with the Sikhs or conflict with the Sikhs. Since '84, we've had Tory governments, we've had Labour governments. There's been a consistent pattern of rejection and denial. And even now, when we sort of give this flowery garland to Cameron, David Cameron, oh, he's clean, he's not as bad as Margaret Thatcher. Well, he was at Darbar Sahib early last year. He made not a single comment about June 1984.
But that's because he said on record he didn't know about this.
Oh.
He said it on record.
And
it was news to him.
No, June 84. It's public news. It's international news. What happened? As an international prime minister,
and he has in Parliament said, look, it was tragic.
It's not just about the documents.
Yeah.
Governments of the world. David Cameron speaks up loudly about Syria, about Libya, human rights there. The 1984 Genocide Coalition has been on public record for years urging the British government to be consistent in its support for human rights around the world. Why does Punjab, Kashmir and elsewhere get left out of the human rights agenda?
But do they do it behind the scenes?
Let me finish.
I'll come to you, Gurpal.
Let me finish. Where certain players are, we're talking about let's not be political and let's not be this. Right, Mr. David Cameron, the best thing you can do, not only on top of an investigation, you have still not fulfilled your promise to the Sikh committee pre-election to implement Sikh ethnic monitoring, just as the Labour government didn't. But furthermore, if you're genuine and sincere, even beyond any form of investigation, half investigation, whatever, are you prepared to listen to the facts of the 1984 genocide? Are you prepared to engage in a discussion with the Sikh community on that? And are you prepared to make a public statement on that?
Gurpal, I mean, there's very strong feelings here, and you know, Tom is expressing very strong opinions as well. Is this maybe party politics, but is this just politics? Would it really get us anywhere?
I think to some extent there is a little bit of politics going on. I mean, I almost got the impression when I listened to Arun, who's leader of the opposition in the upper house of Parliament, he almost seemed very eager to blame the British for this, where actually his party were in government a few years ago. They could have done their own investigation. They've got access to all the secret records and so on. What I would say to what Jagdeesh has just said, could it be that the governments do impress human rights behind the scenes? I have a letter from Sir Geoffrey Howe from back in 1992 where he assured me that a lot was going on behind the scenes trying to convince or trying to convey to the Indian government that they must bring peace in Punjab. And it appears that Canada, Germany, the US at the time, George Bush and so on, were all trying to do the same thing without perhaps making a fuss in the media about it. I mean, my question to Tom, it will be an awkward question, but I think you'll be used to that, is if it were a Labour government at the time, I think our viewers would want to know, if it was a Labour government and the late Michael Foot and Neil Kinnock were very close to Mrs. Gandhi, if they had sent an advisor over to India to talk about a military operation, would you be here now asking the same questions?
Yes, I would. And you've probably got the wrong MP, because I've got a bit of a reputation for speaking out in my own party. But transparency is the only way you can deal with these issues. And so, yes, I would, unquestionably. And actually, if Labour win the 2015 election and this issue is not resolved, then I will be arguing for it after 2015 as well. And your point about quiet diplomacy is obviously an important one, because obviously you can sometimes resolve these very, very dramatic situations if you do things behind the scenes. But this is in the historical context of this needs to be understood. This is why I think the only way we can get clarity of thinking on it is by getting the documents out, so that people make their own view.
I've read some of the documents you've put on your blog, and you know there was a lot of pressure from the Indian government to suppress the Sikh separatist movement or allegedly Sikh extremists in the UK. But Thatcher, you know, gave credit to her, was adamant, no, this is a democracy. In this country we have freedom of speech, we have a free press, and we cannot do that, even if that happens in India. So, you know, Thatcher did stand up for the Sikhs, didn't she?
Well, there's a very curious document in December 1984 that I've published where somebody called Howe, I don't know whether it's Geoffrey Howe or a civil servant with the same name, who seems to send a telegram to our embassies abroad saying, you know, I'm a little bit concerned there might be economic sanctions because we're not dealing with our extremist Sikhs well enough. I've got the word slightly wrong.
age.
Well,
From
long time.
1984. This is.
Well, for me trying to understand, for me trying to piece this together in relation to the documents that nobody knew about until Monday morning, is quite interesting. And you know, I try to. You know, it's hard for me not to be political on this, because I'm thinking, you know, what kind of state is it that puts a trade agreement above every other issue?
Indeed.
You know, to me, human rights are inalienable, and that transcends parties. And you know, that's an equal challenge to my own party as it is to the Conservative Party.
But we're also dealing with
my
colonial
party's not in
power.
power. Well, my party's not in power now, and so I can use my.
They have been in power. I mean, they were in power for many, many years, and they did nothing for the Sikhs.
Well, I don't believe that, but certainly one of the sort of things in my rapid thoughts as I talked to the community from Wolverhampton, Sandwell and Birmingham this week actually, are some of these issues that have been raised and considered a lower order issue, where individuals are raising their own human rights about the way they're treated when they travel to India, or how their children are treated when they travel to India. Should we look at these in more detail now? And my personal view is some of my constituents who raised these points on Thursday have got legitimate points that need addressing.
Arun, as a young Sikh yourself, I mean, one of the concerns, I think, and I think it's been expressed, that we shouldn't allow these revelations to, kind of create some conflict, particularly in this country. But there are a lot of young Sikhs, and if you look at the traffic on social media, there's lots of words like the kind of words that Jagdeesh is using, betrayal, war crimes, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, is that a useful kind of way to see the situation, that we're talking about war criminals? I mean, is that just preempting where we might, is that coming from A to Z?
Okay, yeah, I mean, firstly, I don't think strong language like that is always productive. However, I can understand that, don't forget, that the youth and the knowledge that they have are family stories that they have been told, so maybe somebody in their family was tortured or killed, or it's stuff that they have read, I guess, on the social media. So understandably, we are British. We have always said we're British, we're proud, we've had great links. So I think for some of them it has come as a shock, and they have felt hurt. But naturally you would. If you have faith in somebody and you're proud of something, and all of a sudden you believe that there is, I guess, an inkling that they've done something against your faith, which you believe in, then you would naturally be angry. So I think they should be allowed to, I guess, follow their own process. And what we should do as responsible adults, or I guess in powers of position, is provide the youth with all the information so that they can make a solid decision. And like you said correctly, we're an intelligent quorum, so we want all the facts so we can make a decision.
We, Gurinder and I and other members of the Sikh Council attended a meeting of about 70 to 80 youths yesterday evening in Smethwick, and there is a lot of anger. And some of it is because some of their families have been involved. There were people there who have lost loved ones back in Punjab in the 80s, after 84. And what they said again and again, that this inquiry mustn't be a fudge. It mustn't just be a pleasing exercise for the politicians to appease the Sikhs. And we gave a commitment that wouldn't happen, and the Prime Minister's given that commitment that it wouldn't happen. It won't be a fudge. And Paul has again today. So it's really important that we do, at the start, all the documents must be disclosed, and then people can take a view on it. They might have their own interpretation on it, but then at least they can have a view on those documents, and that's important. And then and then try and bring about some closure on this issue. But like Tom had just said, there are lots of other issues on the back of this particular issue where there are lots of concerns within individual Sikhs, within individual Sikh organisations that need to be addressed on the back of this. But first and foremost, what came out last Monday, we must get to some sort of good closure without it being a fudge, and that's the request we make to government and to Paul today.
I know you've got what's about. I just want to connect that as well. I mean, what is the process? At the moment, I think there's lots of confusion about actually what is the process. Just kind of clarify exactly what is going to be happening in the next few days. Hopefully, not few months. What is the process?
Honest answer, I don't know, 100%. It is. As I said, hopefully, it's not guaranteed yet because it's sort of Monday evening. Hopefully I can get to see the Cabinet Secretary and we can get some guidance as to where we are with this. Timeline is very important. I want to go to the point, specifically the last conversation. This is perhaps not for the panel. It's more for the people who are watching this. In my 3.5 years as a Sikh MP, this is my sort of gut feeling on this. There are lots of organisations out there, government bodies, all sorts of things, who want to have a dialogue with the Sikh community, genuinely want to have a dialogue with the Sikh community. They are almost sort of torn between various groups as to which way they go on this. They want to have a dialogue which actually takes things forward. Here's the truth. None of us and nobody can change what happened yesterday. You can change today and tomorrow. Now, it's how we go forward on this is the important thing. I'll tell you a typical example of this. I walked out of number 10 on the Vaisakhi celebrations, which the Prime Minister does. And I walked out, and you know, you'll remember as well as I will, Budgie, there were people who were demonstrating. No, it was to do, I think, with Professor Buller, because something had broken. I think that morning I was actually on the breakfast TV, on Sikh TV, when the news broke. I think, I'm not going to name the MP, but somebody said, you must go down to 10 Downing Street, and you must protest, and you must do this. And they went down. And I remember there was a young girl, she ran up to me and she goes, Mr. Uppal, can you give us a quote right now? And she stuck my, and I said, look, I'm not going to give you a quote, And there was a young lad who was with her. And eventually she followed me for about 100 yards there. And then the young lad came up to me, he said, Paul, he said, we are young Sikhs and we want to do the right thing, but we are looking for guidance and leadership on this. Genuinely. And I mean, he's a Derby lad, and he actually comes from where my wife used to live in Derby as well. And I think that sentiment, in that little sentence, what he expressed, be it Jagdeesh as his passionate, nobody can sort of deny Jagdeesh's sincerity and his passion on this. And as all Sikhs, we feel that completely. But I think it's how we actually make those connections. I'm the only Sikh member of Parliament. That's a shocking indictment. That is that is disgraceful. For us as a community, what is... And
that's for the Conservative... But also for the Conservative Party to address. But I still want... Tom, I mean, you've been in Parliament a bit longer than Paul, yeah? I mean, how do you see... what is the process that's happening now? And what other instruments are there in Parliament? What other mechanisms could be developed? I think we're all kind of shooting in the dark a bit.
Well, I can tell you for one, Dr. Singh, I will be writing to the Cabinet Secretary on Monday morning asking that I can take a delegation in, so we can perhaps increase scrutiny there.
That's a kind of free-for-all.
I'm not taking a delegation. I asked to see him, he's seeing me, and I advised him.
You said earlier on you said you'd taken a group of Sikhs in with you.
No, I said I've advised him to see some of the Sikhs.
Okay, let's not going to go back ourselves.
I'm sorry if I've misinterpreted what you said.
So are you as unclear as Paul about the actual protocol?
Yes. What I think, I mean, I'm pretty clear about, I mean, this is a relatively simple inquiry if they want it to be. There could be a process where the documents are published, where there is a statement in the House, where MPs are allowed to consult their constituents and representative groups and then debate this in the House, and we could come to a conclusion based on full knowledge of what's in the documents. You could do that in a month.
So you're calling for a parliamentary debate on this? Is that what you're calling for?
Yes, there is a parliamentary... I would like us to have a parliamentary debate after the documents have been disclosed. There is a government petition online that if enough people sign it...
How many signatures have you had on that petition?
I don't know yet. I've not checked this morning. It's only just been approved by the government. But
you would need 100,000 signatures?
You need 100,000 to make it absolute, but if there's a significant number of people that sign it, you can make the case to the committee that decides the debate. And that, I think... You know, what is positive about this? I mean, let's try and sort of look to the future. The one thing about the questions to the Prime Minister this week, I honestly think for the first time, I know this issue has come up before, but for the first time I think it dawned on MPs of all parties just how significant this is to tens of thousands of people in this country. And it allows us to try and create the conditions where people understand the contribution of British Sikhism to this country better than they do. People who don't look at these issues or don't have an historical perspective. And I genuinely hope that that is the goal we can all aspire to.
Jagdeesh Singh, I mean, if this, let's follow the reasoning. If this was a case of the British government supporting the Indian government, it's not just the Sikhs that have got grievances in India, the Tamils have.
Indeed.
In Sri Lanka, and also the Kashmiris have.
Indeed.
So do you think that this actually could become a much wider issue?
Not only could it, because it has become. Kashmiris, Tamils are all knocking on our doors saying, let's unite on this issue, let's use our power as citizens of this country to appeal to our MPs. The 1984 Genocide Coalition, observing the debates that we're having today, observing the debates going on around us, why can't we have plain and simple, and I think this is consistent with what Tom and other colleagues have been doing in Parliament, why can't we have a full-scale backbench parliamentary inquiry which takes away the control of any investigation from the government and hands it to ordinary backbench MPs.
Paul, will you put that request to David Cameron when you meet him?
I thought that was there a request for a parliamentary debate?
No, parliamentary inquiry, which would then invariably lead to a parliamentary debate, or one before the other. But there needs to be, in order for there to be a credible, trustworthy investigation, it needs to be led by backbench MPs who have no axe to grind with either us, them, or the other. They're just plain and simple, unconnected to the subject, and they're carrying out a backbench inquiry.
So even if you can't promise to take Jagdeesh or Tom, would you put that to request?
I think backbenchers do some of that stuff anyway. We have these, and you represent what Tom is doing. Hundreds of MPs do that up and down the country. I represent my constituents as well. You do. There is you could certain parliamentary debates. There's no problem with that.
Do you agree with that proposal? Yes or no?
I'm not sure about what you're actually requesting.
Plain and simple.
Parliamentary.
I'll explain. Well, I think what Jagdeesh is trying to say, if we're not happy with the Cabinet Secretary's inquiry, can the follow-up inquiry be a parliamentary backbenchers inquiry?
Like a select
committee.
That's what I wondered where you were going to.
So more like a select committee where there's, then.
Well, I think inevitably,
like the phone hacking, would that be a good model?
Like the phone hacking.
Well, what'll happen?
I'll even sit on the committee if they let me.
Well, what'll happen is if there's a genuine, people feel okay, this has not been.
Answer the question.
That will almost invariably follow. There'll be debates. It will go through almost invariably, I'm sure.
Okay. Will Cameron give the go-ahead for that, or
I think
authorisation for that?
The select committee itself will actually do that. It'll almost be an automatic sort of thing. I imagine that would sort of happen.
Can I just slightly shift?
But I would go. It's a transparency is the point. So that'll be the test of this. When it comes out, transparency, simple as that.
Okay, we are kind of coming towards the end of our programme. I just want to bring in one other angle. Did you want to just say something on this issue? Because I wanted to just bring in the role of the Indian government. But if you can just.
I think on this issue, the important thing, I want to pick up on something which Tom said just a little while ago. We need to start looking at the future to this as well, and some other opportunities which are around at the moment. This debate has created a lot of media attention. There's a lot of focus on this, and what the Sikh Council is really looking at doing at the moment is how we can use that media attention at the moment to raise awareness of 1984, raise awareness of Sikhs, raise awareness of other Sikh issues at the moment. And there's been some excellent media reporting about the background to all this as well. But Sikhs as generally we need to take advantage of that. But the other thing we also need to do, I think, this has woken people up to that. There is an injustice here towards Sikhs, which has gone on over the years. And I think we need to really look at how we redefine the relationship between British Sikhs and our government in this country. Those issues which are important to us. Some of them UK-based, some of them India-based.
Well,
we need to look at how we can redefine that relationship.
We're actually not talking about what's happening here. We're talking about what's happening 7,000 miles away. And Gurpal, I want to kind of bring you on this because, we haven't really talked about the Indian government, the Indian state, which is really what the whole issue is about. The reality is that Indira Gandhi isn't here now either, and many of the people that were around are not here. And we do have seismic political shifts in India now. Arjun Kejriwal, the AAP, and that the AAP have actually declared that in the November the November killings in Delhi, they've said that that was a genocide, which is the first time because up to now it's been seen as communal riots, dange. So should we not be trying to work with political groups in India now, democratically elected groups like the AAP and others, the Shromani Akali Dal and others, and they have been very vociferous, and actually take the focus of attention to India and not here, not in the British Parliament? Isn't that where we should be going now?
Absolutely agree, yes. What's happening is that in India, again, politics is being played out, and all you ever get is statements from one political leader and then the opposition leader, and nothing concrete ever happens on the Sikh issues. So I think if the Aam Aadmi Party it's been a historical revolution in Delhi with them being elected to power. I think if they're going to, take these issues and do something about them, then I think there's absolutely no doubt that the whole Sikh community will get behind them, and that will cause all sorts of political problems in Punjab.
Yeah. Is this an opportunity to do this? Because I know that for 30 years, the kind of dialogue between the Indian government, whether in India or in this country, and the Sikhs has been virtually zero. And we are always struggling to get them onto these shows. Is this not a great opportunity to dialogue with this new generation of people?
It is a great opportunity, and it's very time. 30 years on since the 1984 genocide, 100 years on from the First World War. All the timing is perfect, and it's quite phenomenal. The greater forces of Waheguru and beyond, I believe, have made this happen at this timely moment. But the challenge now is not just to have a paper inquiry and look at a few documents. What is Cameron or any further government going to do?
Well, I think we're going to have to wait and see what happens. But in the wider political context...
What are they going to do in respect of the substance of 1984, not just the paperwork?
Paul, I mean, have you had any conversations with the Indian government? Because they're kind of on record saying, well, we don't know anything about this. They're in complete denial. I mean, has any communication been established?
I went to see the Indian High Commissioner on Wednesday, actually.
And what was his kind of attitude?
Well, you know, the attitude was that obviously, you know, they're aware, but I mean, I think the point is this, and the point I made to him was, the Prime Minister has acted very, very quickly on this. If the Indian government had acted very quickly as well, and had transparency, maybe we wouldn't have had the pain and the cathartic things we'd had to go through on this. Now, maybe that's not what India particularly wants to listen to. I suspect it's not. But the point is, I think that point has to be made sometimes. And that's, look, in a way, this is a paper exercise that's going through, as Jagdeesh said, but maybe it's come in a way that perhaps open an opportunity to move forward on this. We as Sikhs have never had closure on this, right? Maybe we can't have closure on this because, you know that old saying, nobody really understands anybody else's pain, is quite an apt one. You know, you can empathise, you can sympathise, you can put your head on one side, yeah, I really, really understand. But that was our blood that was spilled over that experience. Or Sadakunsi. And I think that what it is I come back to that basic point. None of us can change what happened yesterday. What is important is how we change today and tomorrow.
Arun, this is a great window of opportunity for some kind of peace, reconciliation and closure. And shouldn't we be kind of going into this with goodwill rather than kind of conflict and antagonism?
Yeah, I agree. I think we were having this discussion before. It is a way to move forward on this on a positive note. However, we do still need to make sure that any human rights violations are addressed, because actually that is a step in the right direction. However, what I would like to see that it is done amicably, and actually we don't in all cases need to use harsh words like we have been. I can understand the passions, because we all have the passions. However, this is the time to be proactive, to be sensible, and actually make sure that the foundations we lay now for closure are ones that actually our children, if need be, are happy with.
Tom, is it not time for reconciliation and rather than conflict?
Oh, I definitely think, you know, a sense of compassion, and if you can find the love in your heart, then you can always resolve any problem. And that's for leaders other than myself to do that. You know, again, trying to be positive. If we can understand more about the issue of 1984, particularly Britain's role in it, then that might help with this process. And let's just hope this inquiry, whatever form it takes, is resolved very, very quickly.
Jagtar Singh, I know that there's events taking place in the following few days. And do you want to just say a bit about that?
I think, well, the Sikh Council tomorrow have a big Sikh gathering at the Old Gurdwara in Smethwick, and it's at 3 o'clock. So we're inviting all Gurdwaras, all Panthic organisations, and any individuals that would like to discuss and hear about this particular issue. And also we appeal to all the Gurdwaras and the committees that they announce from the stage what has happened and what is happening to try and get to the bottom and the solution, so that members of the Sangat who aren't sort of watching the TV channels all the time or reading the print media but have heard what's happened, they're given the information that they require to at least understand that there is an issue and the government is looking at it, and hopefully we'll have closure quickly. So that's important. So we appeal to the Gurdwaras, the state secretaries, to tomorrow morning go on the stage, and that was one of the requests made by the youngsters yesterday, that it's important that the Gurdwaras actually discuss the issue, not in a sort of emotive way, but in a factual way, that this has come about and what's happening, the work organisations like Sikh Council are doing to ensure that we get full disclosure, to ensure that we try and get to the bottom of this, and secondly, we in the Sikh Council, we're working with government. I know Paul said that there's a need within government to talk to Sikh bodies and Sikh organisations. We've actually tried to plug that gap over the last 2 or 3 years.
And I think you've done a great job. So
and it's important that we carry this forward,
keep the dialogue
not
going,
just with government, but with the Labour Party, local politicians as well.
But Gurinder, the wider, I mean, is it a time for reconciliation, for peace, and for moving forward rather than going back?
I think it is. I think the issues that have arisen and the way it has hit the media and the conscience of a politician lends it to that. But that can only happen on the basis of full disclosure. We have to know the truth before we can move on. And that's something we've said in the Indian media as well. There's an opportunity there for India as well. But the one thing, Prime Minister's moved very quickly on this. He has set up this review and there's an opportunity there. But one thing the Prime Minister hasn't set up to date, he hasn't given a commitment to full disclosure. So we will continue pressing.
I think that's firmly on the record. Jagdeesh Singh, you're a peace activist. What would you say to the youth out there who might feel very angry?
I would say your anger is justified. Keep it disciplined, keep it directed. I've always said to young Sikhs, and I say that to all communities, be angry, but channelise your anger in a constructive direction. Now, constructive direction means organising campaigns, petitions, lobbying, and doing even direct action where necessary to bring out the truth. This subject, you speak to a Jewish victim of the Holocaust, they will echo exactly what we're saying. Talk about peace and reconciliation, semi-investigations, they will find that insulting. What we want the truth. We want to work with everybody. We want to work with parliamentarians. And we also want to work with the UN for an international investigation into 1984.
Okay. So, I mean, there's a big agenda there. And I'm sure that we'll all be very busy over the next few weeks and months commemorating 30. Gurpal, did you want to just have one final word?
I just wanted a final word, and one of the things that has to come if we want to have closure is we've got to rebuild our links with the Hindu community, because all the tension of the last 30 years, that sort of feeling of brotherhood that we have with that community, we've just grown distant.
Yeah. And I would want to underline that. I mean, this is a non-sectarian issue. This was, crimes against human beings. And in fact, part of the smokescreen that was thrown around 84 was that this was a sectarian and that the Hindus somehow hated the Sikhs. That's not the case. It never has been the case. This is not a sectarian issue. This is about human rights. And I'd like to think that everybody around this table would be championing the human rights of any community, anywhere, because we are all, at the end of the day, human rights activists. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming today and offering your honest and forthright comments. I think, in many ways, everybody's comment has been helpful in building up momentum for moving forward. And so hopefully some of the victims of 84 will get some peace and some reconciliation from even these dialogues. But as Jagdeesh is saying, you can't have peace and reconciliation without justice, and the justice agenda will be there. So thanks very much. Keep watching Sikh Channel, and we will be bringing you debates like this and try to bring the kind of current news on this and hopefully to inform the community out there. So, ithe aapa fateh bulane ha. Waheguru ji ka khalsa, Waheguru ji ki fateh.
I would want to know a bit more about this. I would want to know what the British High Commission were telling her. Yes.
Yeah.
What information was she getting? What was her foreign secretary telling her as to the status of the people who were occupying what we call the temple, but which you say was the administrative side? As to what was the group? To what extent were they the true leaders of the whole Sikh community, which puts one complexion on it? To what extent would she have been told that they were a fringe or extreme or very radical? Nothing wrong with all those things, by the way, at times, but nevertheless, I would need to understand what she had been told.
It should be a shock, but I think if we were to look nowadays at what the governments do to their people, it's absolutely wrong. There's no excuse whatsoever for.
I think that's how sometimes colonialist governments roll. It's just more about political interest, which shouldn't be the case. And given the fact that they were Sikh people were supporting them before, it's like a kind of a betrayal to me.
I can understand why the Sikh community would be very unhappy about it.
If there was an operation to kill off the Sikh leaders, supposing that were the case, you might ask them, how would I go in and find them and kill them? I'd like to think they wouldn't do it or wouldn't agree to it. It would be pretty damn shocking if they did.
Fortunately, it doesn't surprise me whatsoever. I think if you look at Thatcher's record within the UK itself, a good section of the country loathed her, and in my opinion for good reason. So yeah, I understand you and your community's anger, and unfortunately it doesn't surprise me. And I think as time goes on, we will see, the truth will come out more and more about how she really acted behind the scenes.
I'm over 60, so I was alive at the time, and I am concerned that quite often the public doesn't know what happens in political circles.
The Sikh community, you're entitled to learn what the extent of the advice, the nature of it. If it was just some mustachioed old English officer giving a few tips, that's one thing. If it was a complete plan drawn up which involved storming with assault rifles and bombs or whatever it was, then you're talking about, if you like, a major criticism and concern for the British Army. What was it doing?
Well, I think it's important that all the facts are made available so that the wider community can understand what has happened historically and what the issues are.